Good morning. I'm Janet Stover, Executive Director of the Illinois Association of Rehabilitation Facilities, and with me this morning is Senator Bill Brady, Republican candidate for the office of governor in this November's election. And we're here today to talk about human services because that's what our constituency is interested in. And the way we're going to conduct this morning is to give the senator time to mention what his priorities are, and then we have 2 or 3 questions that we're going to follow up based, on some things that are important to our members. So I'll turn it over to you, and we'll hear what you have to say.
Well, Janet, thank you for giving me the opportunity to be with you this morning, and thank you for all you do to help those citizens that need our help in some of the most cases. Human services and development disabilities and other people who are vulnerable very much need our services in government. They also need our services in charity in terms of involvement. In much of my life, my family's been involved and somewhat impacted. I have a niece who is a Down syndrome adoptee, and understand the challenges that family faces. And I've also been involved in various causes that help in this area, from chairing United Way fundraising drives to watching my mom's involvement in the Occupational Developmental Services Center, something that unfortunately closed in McLean County last year because of the budget crisis that our state faces. But our priority has to be public safety and human services as we move forward. We have a responsibility in government to take care of those, and as governor, I'll lead and champion the causes to do the most we can do.
Okay. As an elected official and working in both the Illinois House and the Senate for many years now, you've obviously had the opportunity to work on issues related to disability and human services, and as you mentioned, have been involved with agencies that are in your district that provide these services and the families and individuals who rely on them. So one of the things that is of concern to our members and constituents that are interested in this topic is, in a Brady administration, what would guide you, and what would be your priorities to ensure that the safety net of these services are available?
Well, obviously that's a concern and a priority, and one of the most important issues is that we budget properly. Unfortunately, we've put many of these organizations at risk because we've overpromised and underdelivered. Just last week, the Urban Institute named Illinois and Governor Quinn as the worst in the nation when it comes to meeting our obligations at the local level. Many of our human service providers are wondering when they're going to receive payment. When they don't receive payments, it puts them at a very critical juncture. But we also have to make it a priority. So as we redefine Illinois spending, we have to make funding of various areas priorities, but live within our means, and then deliver on the promises we make so that the local units can and will be able to count on the resources that they plan for, so that they can use those at the best possible way to deliver services at the local level.
You mentioned, and you're touching on an area that is critically important to our constituency, and that is the backlog of payments. And because the majority of the services that they provide are Medicaid services, and that represents, in most cases, 90% or more of the funding that they receive, and it all comes from the state. The backlog of payments, as it continues to grow, it makes it increasingly difficult for them to maintain services and even maintain their own viability. So, as someone who has campaigned on a conservative approach to getting us out of the fiscal crisis that we're in, what would you say to those backlog of payments and how you would address them?
Well, what Governor Quinn has done is he's forced people to go out into the marketplace and try to borrow money against their accounts receivable. But many of the people haven't been able to do so because the banks don't feel that the accounts receivable from the state of Illinois are valid because of the fiscal instability that Governor Quinn's put us in. So as I said earlier, what we have to do is balance our budget. We've had a structural deficit year in, year out of about $5 billion. We know that, according to the comptroller, Governor Quinn's racked up at least $5 or $6 billion in unpaid bills. My job as governor has to be lead on a balanced structural budget so that we're not continuing to add to the problem, and build resources into the budget to pay back the backlog of unpaid bills. There's some ways to do that. One is we could do it over a period of 2 or 3 years to reduce the payment cycle down to the level it should be. Or we could potentially, if we build those resources, look for alternative ways to provide immediate cash to the vendors who are on critical condition, as you will know, because of Governor Quinn's fiscal mismanagement. We'll look at those options because we realize what critical condition many of these providers are in.
Okay. Last question is, as you campaign these final days, there are many of us who work in this field and are impacted by it, perhaps even if we don't work in the field, by having a family member or someone we know who has a disability or struggles with mental illness. And so one of the things we're looking at is some sign that these services and supports that are so vitally necessary will be a priority in the next administration. Right. And so from your perspective, how would you reassure us that it will be a priority in yours?
Well, again, my vision is that we make sure that people are in the least restrictive environment, community-based environments as best we can, as possible. That way we can maximize quality of life and maximize resources. But just as we need long-term plans for roads, bridges, rail, and air, broadband, we need a long-term plan for this. And it's one of the reasons I supported the Revenue Commission on services, and we need to appoint members to it to try to give a long-term plan to the human service providers so that they're not fighting year in and year out for resources, so they know what they can count on, not just this year and not just next year, but in the long term. And so we'll be analyzing every area of state government and trying to give some long-term stability to funding resources so that the good people who are working at the local level don't have to worry about what's going to happen next year or even this year. And so I want to take a much broader approach to the long-term stability of Illinois and provide a plan for the people that we rely on to provide those vital services to our communities.
Well, we've touched on the key areas of interest from our perspective in terms of the backlog of payments that are so difficult and making sure that the community services that are provided for people with disabilities and mental illness would be a priority and are understood in terms of their value by the next governor that we elect. So I would turn it back to you to see if there's any final comments that you'd like for those that would watch to know.
Yeah. Well, human services is very important, a priority, just as public safety is and others too are. But Illinois' economy is a big part of being able to provide the resources. I can't overestimate the importance of creating a healthy economy. Under Governor Quinn, we've lost over 200,000 jobs. That's over $3 billion. That's over $1 billion in revenue yearly that we've lost that could be used to fund this. So as important as what government does is, it's also important that we rebuild our economy. Balancing our budget is part of that. Fostering an environment where businesses invest in Illinois and bring jobs back to hardworking families. People are associated and need human services for a loved one, also need economic viability in their own lives. So I can't underestimate how important it is, or overestimate how important it is that we have a governor who can lead on jobs, who can balance our budget so that local units of support know what they can count on, and then we can begin to rebuild our state.
I want to thank you very much for being with us and wish you all the luck.
Thank you very much.